Thank you very much for this kind introduction. Unfortunately, these were the only 2 words now in Spanish. You have to listen now a German guy speaking English. But I think together we will manage. You will see the charts in your language, and I will have my version here on my computer, so I will speak in English, and together we will make it. Because I think it's a very exciting topic now. We need really to consider what is healthy growth in the early infancy, because we more and more understand that the growth of our babies within the first 12 months has a long impact for long-term health. And this is the presentation we'll focus on, my presentation and also the second presentation. What you see here is, this importance of the first 1,000 days. And it's our task. It's the task of the pediatricians to give the right advice in this time. So we have learned from last week was a publication from the UNICEF, and the major concern for childhood health is obesity. And it's not anymore malnutrition around the world, so the picture has changed. It is about obesity prevention. And if we think about obesity prevention, it starts in the early life, as you can see on the right part of the chart. The intervention we give at the early part, in the early life, will have a really long-term impact. And the first advice, of course, is breastfeed your baby. With the WHO recommendation for the first 6 months exclusively, and then in combination with baby food. And all these benefits. But I think in the past, the focus was very much on prevention from infection. But what we now more and more understand is the point, what is seen here, is also about the prevention of obesity. So that's a long-term impact. It's not that you see it during the breastfeeding period. You see it 15 years, 20 years later. So that's what we need to understand more and more, and that's why I will focus on why maybe is this link between breast milk and breastfeeding and long-term health. And we need to understand the evolution in breast milk. And you can see this is changing over the time. It's the most individualized nutrition a baby can get. It's changing during the day, but it's also changing with the lactation stage. And I will show you what are the main changes are during that time. And you know that in the beginning, with the breast milk is very much whey dominated with protein, but it goes down, so the whey goes down and casein goes up. So there is the change in the quality of the protein, and you will see this here, that for example, and this is what we have all we have been trained on that. There is a colostrum, there is a in-between milk, the transitory breast milk, and then we speak about the major milk. And these were the changes we have in mind. But now, with the new science, we need also to ask ourselves, is there further changes after 3 weeks? Is there further changes during the upcoming time? And new research clearly shows that there is a further evaluation in protein content. So the protein content is dramatically changing over the time. So it's not that the same protein content of the breast milk in the first 6 months, when you see it here, between the first 6 months and 6 to 24 months, so the first 2 years. So there is a major change over the time. So the protein content in breast milk goes further down. And this makes sense, because the growth rate in the baby goes down. And then you have the period, and this is then where it comes really an oversupply with protein, is the period when you start here at 6 months of course, the protein supply with breast milk is not sufficient anymore. But what are we doing? We recommend baby food. So we bring more protein in, what is then needed for the real requirements of the baby, with baby food. But we need then to consider what is the protein content in our milk products, in our formulas. Because here we can get a very high combination between a high protein formula and in combination with the introduction of baby food. So that's why, and this was shown here. Here you see it for the first, this was one of the first studies showing the difference in weight gain. And so we know that at the beginning there is not so much different when you see it in the first 3 months, because this is very much matching the protein requirements between breast milk and formula fed babies. But look what is happening after 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. This is normally when we change the formula from a starter formula to a follow-on formula with even more protein in. So you see that already there is a huge difference between weight gain between formula-fed babies and fully breastfed babies. And this has long-term consequences, as I already said, because this is a part of accelerated weight gain. And this higher weight gain will end up in a higher risk for obesity later on. So I don't know how it's here in Spain, but I can tell you, at least in Europe, we have a very much focus on obesity prevention, and we're only discussing sugar. We need to have a look from a broader scope. The prevention starts with the first recommendation to the infants, breastfeed your baby. And I think we need more and more to take this in consideration. And this is our task as pediatrician, we need clearly follow up the weight gain. We need to see if the baby is going this way, then it's a sign of a wrong metabolic program, what is happening in the first 6 months of life. And we know this is just an overview. I will not go in all the details, but you see that this is the prevention, long-term prevention of obesity in a fully breastfed baby. It's a risk reduction by around 30%. You see, it's also the difference in this publication or in this meta-analysis. Most of them were only asking whether breastfeeding, yes, no, but when you here look at this is the biggest one, then you see there was a link also in the duration, at least for the first 9 months. So there was a clear link between the duration of breast milk and a higher benefit. So breastfeeding prevents from obesity. And what is this in breast milk? And there is some research going around. Is this the carbohydrate composition? Because as I said, it's changing over the time. But what we more and more understand, this is not linked to the carbohydrates in breast milk. It's not linked to the fat composition. When you look at fully breastfed babies, you also see different growth pattern. But when you then analyze the breast milk behind, then you see a more accelerated weight gain in a fully breastfed baby is linked to the protein content in breast milk. So it's the protein content in breast milk what is also a main driver for growth. Yeah? So that's why, to summarize the protein part, I think we know that the protein content decreases over the time. So breast milk offers a stage system. We have a long discussion, do we need a stage system? If we really will follow the breast milk, we need a clear stage system. But we need a new stage system, because breast milk stages over the time. We know that is the best start for long-term healthy growth, and we know that protein is also in the breast milk a key driver for long-term growth. So what is now the alternative if we change to alternative milks? And here you see just the different protein content in different milks around the animals. The highest is in rats because they have a high growth rate, and you see that actually the protein content in the milk is linked to the velocity of growth. So we can clearly say a normal cow's milk is not designed for healthy babies, okay? So because the protein content is by far too high. Coming back again to the protein evolution in breast milk, here you see the breast milk again. But what is if we decide to give cow's milk? And cow's milk, I don't know how it's in Spain, but it's very still, I mean, we have the recommendation not to use cow's milk in the first 12 months, but after. And we know a lot of babies that getting cow's milk as a drink, even as a formula replacement within the first 12 months. But see what is happening if you put a baby on cow's milk. See the protein supply you are doing in comparison. When you go for infant formulas, this is the regulation. The regulation of protein contents is too high. We still have too high amounts. The variation is very high. And the studies, what has been done with new protein contents is on the green line. You see, we are able today to come much closer to the protein content what we do see in breast milk. So with the formula, with the today formula choice, in general, we can say that protein goes down over the time in breast milk. We have an oversupply with protein in the early infancy. This is on the second graph. Here you see it. This is an oversupply. You see the blue line. This is what the baby needs in protein. But you see what the baby gets. And 80% of this oversupply comes from milk proteins, because we need really to differentiate between the proteins. So it comes from milk protein, what drives this metabolic programming. And we know that if we have an oversupply with protein in the first 2 years, we have an accelerated weight gain, and we have a higher risk for obesity. So we need really to manipulate the protein formulas. And this is just a study, you will see it later, I just put it here. This clearly shows the weight gain with a high protein formula at the beginning in comparison to low protein formula, and it also shows the risk of excessive fat. That's the problem. It's really the fat storage what is too high. So we have a higher risk for obesity depending on the formula content protein, and we storage really much more fat in our body. The mechanism behind, you have heard about the protein hypothesis. So it's not only the amount of protein, it's also the composition of the protein. So it's driven by amino acids profile. So we need always to have a look on the amino acid profile. It's not enough just to reduce the amount, you need also to have the right quality. I will not describe this in detail because you will do this in your language much more easier maybe to understand. So what we know from the study again is protein leads to this accelerated weight gain and leads to higher fat storage. And that's just, this on this side is just underlying the mechanism. You stop the transferation of fatty acids in energy, and that's why with the protein you get a higher storage of fat in your body. So that is the link between the protein and the fat metabolism. So what we need to do is we need to work on the quality of the proteins. And this is just a demonstration. So the small dot in the middle of this graph, when you look at that, the small dot, this is the distribution of this responsible amino acids in breast milk. The blue one, this is the distribution of these amino acids in our modern formula system. The red one is just an example of what can happen in this normal commercial available systems with the distribution of this responsible amino acids. So this is much closer to the distribution of the amino acids, closer to the ones that we found in breast milk. But this is not enough. We need to have clinical trials. That's the most important thing, that not just trusting in, yeah, we have reduced the protein, this is not the major part. Please show us the grow data. And we have done a lot of studies, I think it's now 3, and it's just between 0 to 12. I think we have studies to look at 4 months growth. We have studies that growth between 4 to 12 months. And we have studies with the risk group. The risk group are the babies, the highest risk to become obese are babies that are already coming from obese mothers. So just in a few words on this meta-analysis here. Here you see a low protein formula, high quality meta-analysis you see around the world. And you see, in general, this formula, this is a starter formula, ensures a growth pattern. This is the dot here, the overall a growth pattern, what is close to the medium of a fully breastfed baby. So with the low protein formula, we can really get the baby closer to the fully breastfed babies. On the other hand, this was a study in the US, and here you see the new formula system. So you start with a low protein formula at the beginning for the first 4 months, and then you change to different follow-on formulas with different protein content. And this is not a huge difference. Yeah? But it shows that the low protein formula again is closer to the breast milk. But what it also shows is that the weight from 4 to 12 months was significantly lower in the low protein group. And this is the outcome again showing accelerated weight gain, that the weight above the 85th percentile, what is defined as the risk for later overweight, was significantly less frequent in the low protein group. So you get the weight gain down, and you have a lower risk for a risk factor for obesity later on. And this is this risk study, where this is a study from Chile. And here you see the problem also around the world, because Chile is not in Europe, and the protein supply, because of the regulatory framework, is even much higher. So this high protein is what is now still requested in this part of the world. So it's by far too high, and we would like to get the discussion on to lower the protein content. And here you see again our new stage system with a protein formula at the beginning, and then the protein goes down again. And this was a risk group, and the difference was even much more obvious. This is the medium difference in weight gain. You can say 500 grams is not a lot, it's huge. 500 in the medium, the median, a 500 gram medium weight gain difference is huge. So again, this system shows a much better weight gain in this risk group. So that's why we can really help this group to get a lower risk for obesity. And now the problem starts, what I already mentioned before, is the low protein equal low protein? And here you see a study from a research group that have used the low protein formula. Here in green, this was the low protein formula. But what do you see was the highest growth, was the highest weight gain. So low protein, the message clearly is low protein is not enough, because you cannot compare them, because they are different in the protein quality. So if just saying, yeah, we have now low protein content, we need then to ask what is the quality and what are the growth studies. Because here, in this system, as you can see, it would be much better, you would keep the high protein formula. So low protein is not enough. We need to have the clinical trials behind. And this is just showing you the average. What is in a market? This is just a European perspective to demonstrate. But the message is, today, most stage systems go up in protein. So they start even higher at the beginning, but then they go up. You have now seen several times breast milk goes down. So, and we are working on a first stage system where the protein evolution follows the breast milk example. So for the first time, as you can see here, we try to go down with the clinical trials behind for a better long-term growth. And again, I would remind us on the protein content in cow's milk. So do not recommend the cow's milk protein in the early life, at least not in the first 12 months. And this is also following, I will just click it through. This is also following the regulations. So the regulation has changed because in Europe, the minimum was too high. The defined minimum in the regulation was too high. And all expert societies have now published, please start to rediscuss the protein requirements in infant formula systems. And that's why we also needed to wait. We have done the studies, but you cannot just put it on the market because you need to follow the regulation. The regulation, so the European regulation has changed the protein requirements that you can now also offer stage system with or based on the latest scientific evolution. So to finalize, and to come to the end of my presentation, I would highlight a second point in the discussion. It's about the formula choice. First, it's about breastfeeding advice. It's about the formula choice. And it's about the monitoring of the weight gain. This is what we need to keep in mind. And I'm also working as a pediatrician, and we rather say something to the parents when the weight goes down. Then we have warning and then say, oh, there's something. But we need to ask ourselves, do we really interfere when the weight goes up? When they are crossing a percentile, we still say, yeah, it's early in life, that will change. We need to keep in mind, if they're crossing a percentile, then it's also a sign of the malprogramming already. So we need also to advise, and we need to understand also about what is the feeding volume. Because we can tell you from some research, all the babies are overfed with the amount what they get from bottle feeding. Yeah? And we think always a little bit more is better. Sorry, it's not the case. Yeah? So we need also to watch that. We need to see if the accelerated weight gain is a risk factor. So we need really to monitor the weight. And that is also a very important step. This has shown in this study. Here you see fully breastfed baby, more or less, on the blue, red, and green color. There was, and the risk, the association to the higher risk at 6 years. This is the feeding. Yeah, the feeding at the first 6 months, not really different. But when the baby was obese or overweight at 6 months, this was a clear risk factor. So what we see with the protein is this accelerated weight gain. So the accelerated weight gain is a clear risk factor. And that's why, of course, it starts with breastfeeding advice. But it starts also, or it continues also with the right advice during baby food period. Yeah? So it's a continuation. But we need to start from zero and not to wait until the baby is, until the child is already in kindergarten or in the school. So the new stage system is also a change in the behavior, because normally we think that if, for example, the baby was breastfed for the first 6 months, then when you have a new stage system, and this is then you have maybe to check and look, then it's maybe better not to go back to a starter formula, but now with this new formula, because it's much more appropriate from the protein content to the age. So it's also a little bit the behavior. And with this, I would really like to thank you for your attention. Muchas gracias.